Good morning. My name is Danielle Kaysen. I'm with the Escondido Police Department, and we are here today to discuss Safe Walk Home. Safe Walk is a combined collaboration between the Escondido Police Department and the schools in the city of Escondido. And basically what Safe Walk is all about is safety for the children and also safety for the Safe Walk volunteers who are out there at the schools. It is a team effort, and it's important that your volunteers be aware of what their job duties are out there at the schools, and so being ready equals being successful. The biggest thing that they are responsible for is being extra eyes and ears. So it's important that they look, watch, and listen. And what they are going to be looking for is suspicious activity. And suspicious activity includes adults that are loitering around the school that really don't have any purpose to be there. They're not picking up a child. They just seem to be hanging around. So those would be that would be a good thing to be documenting the description of that person and calling it into the office so we could possibly get an officer to come out there and make contact with that person and find out what and why they are hanging around the school. Vehicles that just seem to be hanging around as well. Somebody's sitting in a car parked along the street, not during the beginning of the school or not really at the end of the school. They just seem to be hanging out there. That would also be good documentation as far as license plate number, the description of the car, the color of the car, so that we could have somebody come out there and make contact with that person. Strangers approaching students. The only way you're really going to find out about that is if the students come up to you and say, hey, this guy came up to me and said this to me. So it's important that the students are able to provide a good description of who that person is, and for the Safe Walk volunteer not to approach that person, but to again document the description of that person, phone it in to the liaison, and then make the appropriate call to the police department. Gang activity. Gang activity, that's kind of a broad statement. You have kids that hang around during school, after school, beginning of school. So it's important to differentiate between what gang activity is and actual just kids hanging around. So the best thing that the parent volunteer can do is just be watchful of what they're doing, and if they have reason to believe that it meets the criteria for actual gang activity, again, making that appropriate call to the liaison and then calling the police department. Watching for dangerous situations such as bullying, fighting, and kids not observing traffic rules. So it's important to kind of determine whether or not it's actual bullying, because you're going to have kids that are going to pick on each other and tease each other. So it's important that you really understand what bullying is, and it's so if they're putting somebody down and it seems to be an ongoing type of a thing, that's when you need to get the information about who that bullier is. If the child happens to know the name of that person, then that's an interaction then with the school to talk to the parents and try and eliminate that that issue. Fighting, we don't get a lot of calls for service for fighting at some of the elementary schools, but the middle schools we do. And generally speaking, the kids all know when something like that is going to happen. And if the Safe Walk volunteer has a good rapport with the kids that are going home or even before school, and they get that information about, hey, there's going to be a fight over here at Ash and Mission, then that's really important to pass that information on to the school so that the Escondido Police Department can respond out. If you actually see some pushing and shoving or fists flying, then again, that's important to have them call and make the call to the Escondido Police Department. Descriptions of them, if they happen to know their names, and that's one good thing about the volunteers out there is they have a tendency to build up that good rapport with the kids, so they get to know what the kids' names are and other information about them. So writing down their names, description of clothing, all that information is real helpful. Kids not observing traffic rules, that's real important because a lot of times it's not the kids that are not observing the traffic rules, it's the parents that are asking them to cross during the middle of the street, to cross cross at the crosswalk. They only cross if there's a crossing guard there that they cross when it's okay for them to do that and not have them have their child running across the street. Yes, ma'am.
On the fighting part, are we allowed to stop the fight as far as safe volunteers?
Well, my thing would be this. You can't lay your hands on a child. If you're close enough to them, you could ask them to stop fighting. But if you notify the school then is the school staff would be the one that would be coming out to actually break up the fight and pull the children apart and take them to the school office. So you can ask them to stop fighting, but you can't touch the child. And it's important to make that call to the liaison person at the school with the description of the kids, the names, and all that information, and then let the school staff handle that. Is that correct? Is that how you guys do it? Perfect. Being, again, eyes and ears, you're going to have more of an issue with children maybe crying or that type of stuff at the elementary school level. It could be that they just had a bad day. They don't want to take their F home to their parents and they just are upset. It could be that maybe their lunch got stolen that day. Whatever the case may be. I would feel it would be appropriate for you to go up to a child that is crying or seems to be in distress. As a parent, I would want somebody to do that and find out what the problem is. And if it's something that needs to be handled by the school, then that's an appropriate call to the school office, to the staff, and have that child taken back to the office and deal with it there. Students refusing to comply with an adult, name calling. If it's going on while the parent volunteer is out there, I don't see any reason why you can say, hey, guys, come on. You don't call each other names. That's not appropriate. That's not respectful. And you don't want to make a bullying issue out of it. You basically want to kind of nip it in the bud before it gets to that point. But I don't see any reason why you couldn't say, hey, come on, guys, stop it. You walk this direction, you walk this direction, and kind of, ask them to split up a little bit. Students refusing to comply with an adult, if that poses to be a situation that would be dangerous, which means that they're walking across the street and not in compliance with a crossing guard or not doing something that is safe, that would be appropriate to try and see if you could find out who they are. And again, making that phone call to the office and reporting it. That's kind of a real, that could cover a multitude of things. So I would be careful with that only because there's really not a lot that the parent volunteers can do with regards to that, but they can document the information, and if they know who the child is, then that's a call to the staff and for the school staff to deal with that. Being prepared, make sure that your Safe Walk volunteers always go out with their vest, because that lets the kids know who they are. If they're just walking around there without their vest, they don't know that they're a safe person that they can go to. Being prepared also means having their notepad with a pencil, having their radio, their whistle, and their partner. And make sure they check their radios before they do leave the office and go out. That's the last thing you want to do, is go out with a radio that has a dead battery. So you want to make sure that the radio is functioning and that the liaison, I'm assuming you guys check in with each other to make sure that you have good communication with each other. Now also on the be prepared, that could also be making sure that one of the two has a cell phone in case there is an emergency, and being able to call 911. The vest, those vests are pretty orange, and that's important, because it's not only makes them visible to the kids, but it also, when we're out there, if I'm out there, any of the Escondido police officers are out there, it lets us know that that is the Safe Walk volunteer, and it's not a crossing guard, because our crossing guards are in different uniforms. So that lets us know that if there is a call for service at that school, that we know then who made that call or who observed that activity. And so it gives us an opportunity to find that person and be able to go over there and talk to them. The vest is only supposed to be worn when they are on duty. So if they're off duty, or it's not during the time that the Safe Walk volunteer is supposed to be out there, you need to make sure that they check their vests back in, so they're not just walking around wearing the vest. And there again, vests are not to be taken home. So just make sure that there's a check-in and check-out system at the school, so that they check back in their radios and they check back in their vests. Taking notes. This information is really important, especially if there's suspicious activity, or there's an issue where you've got children that are fighting, or there's a report from a child regarding something that's going on. They need to be able to report the make and model of the car if they can. Knowing that it's a 4-door and it's white and it looks like a Toyota Camry, I mean, that would be close enough. That would be something that we would be able to go out there and look for. We don't want them to approach the vehicles to find out what kind of car it is, but we do want them to be observant. If they can get the license plate number, that would be great, because we all have computers in our cars, and we can actually run the plates of those vehicles to find out actually what kind of car it is. And dispatch can do that as well and put the information out to the officer if it's something that we need to respond to. How many people are in the car, if they're male or female, that's very important too, so we know exactly what it is that we're looking for. If it's a suspicious person at the school that seems to be loitering around in the school, what are they wearing? They're wearing a black short sleeve t-shirt, they have a blue ball cap on, they're wearing blue jeans and white tennis shoes. So those are real specific things that we can look for, and whenever we're coming out there, we know exactly what kind of person we're looking for. The notepads are to be checked in and kept with the school site's parent liaison. Now, what happens to the notes? Do the notes just stay in the notepad? What do you guys do with them? Well, okay, you attach them to the log? Okay. So if it was something that, say there was a suspicious vehicle out at Rose School, and the parent volunteer looks at it and goes, well, that car's been sitting here for the last couple of days and just kind of sitting out here, but they haven't been picking up any kids. So they happen to jot down the information in the notepad. But the next day, come to find out that person has been getting out of the car and approaching kids. So being able to have access to those notes on our end would be very important. So that's why I asked what happens to those notes. Okay, perfect. Okay, this was always kind of a kind of an issue whenever I was initially involved with Safe Walk. We would have parents that were pretty close to each other. They'd be out there working, and they would be discussing what they were going to be having for dinner that night. And by the way, we were planning on going here this weekend, and this happened to somebody. So that's something that's very, very important. The radios are for communicating activity, communicating issues, and not for conversations. That's not the time or the place for you to be having those kind of conversations. That's a cell phone conversation for a later time. One radio per pair. Also make sure that the person who has the radio is able to, that has some communication skills, that they're able to put out the information that they need to. So if the other person, if you have two people and you have one person that's more comfortable with speaking and the other person is more comfortable with taking notes and writing things down, then that's something that needs to be worked out between the pairs. Because if you have a suspicious activity or you have an accident and you're trying to communicate that to the staff, your staff liaison, and you can't get the words out, then somebody else needs to be able to handle the radio to respond to that. Non-emergencies, report those to the liaison, or if staff happen to be out there, is that appropriate for them to do that as well? If there's a staff person close by, they can walk up to the staff person and say, this activity is going on without calling the liaison. That's perfect. Emergencies, depending on what the emergency is, if it's not a life-threatening emergency, it would be the same thing. It would be getting on the radio, reporting that to either staff or getting a hold of staff. If it's life-threatening, having one person handle the radio and notify the school. The other person is on the phone with 911 and lets them know of what the emergency is. And one thing that your parent volunteers need to also understand is we always have a Spanish speaker in our dispatch center on all of our shifts. So they don't need to be concerned about the fact that they're not going to be able to communicate with somebody. We always have somebody that will be able to communicate with them, even if they are a Spanish speaker. Okay, this is good. What is the difference between an emergency and a non-emergency? An emergency, an event or a situation that poses an immediate risk to health, life, property, or environment. You have an accident. A child's been hit by a car. They're laying in the street. That is definitely a 911 call. You have a report of somebody in the vicinity of the school with a gun. That is definitely a 911 call. So you have kids that are fighting, and you have a large group of kids. I'm not talking about one or two that are just pushing or shoving. I'm talking about a large gathering of kids that are watching several other kids beat up on another child. That would be a 911 call. And then the other partner would then be on the radio with the school staff. So those would be a situation that you would be calling 911. A non-emergency, again, the pushing, shoving kind of stuff, the name calling, those would not be a situation where you would be calling the police department for. Say there's a fender bender and you've got two parents that are involved in an accident with each other because one's pulled out and hit another car, and now they're in a confrontation with each other. That's not an emergency. Call and have a staff member come over and then be on the phone with us. Have the staff member call dispatch. And again, the note taking as far as the license plate number, the description of vehicles, the description of the people involved, all real helpful to know. Whistles. You were asking earlier about kids that you know, are kind of pushing and shoving, or you know, kind of at odds with each other. To get their attention, you can blow the whistle. Or if you see a child that's maybe about to cross the street in the middle of the street, you could blow your whistle, get their attention, and say, "Hey, use the crosswalk." Those would be good situations of using the whistle. Believe me, kids tune out stuff like that after a period of time. So using it sparingly is appropriate. That way that they don't, if the parent volunteers out there and uses it all the time, the kids are going to start to ignore it. Now, you all have designated areas that the parents are assigned, right? And so they understand that they're not supposed to go past that location. And so that needs to be impressed upon them, that they have a certain area that they are to walk and be the extra eyes and ears and be watchful for. But going beyond that point is not something that they're supposed to do. But if they hear that there's a fight going on a block away, then it's still important, because it's still involving the kids from school. So it's still important that they call that information in, because the kids are going to tell you, by the way, there's a fight over there in the park, or there's a fight over here in the parking lot. So call the school and let the school handle it, as far as having us come out or having a staff member be able to intercede with that. A staff member, parent volunteers should never go out by themselves. So that would be, it's the same thing with our volunteers we have at our department. We never allow them to go out by themselves. So if there's an odd number, then you're going to send out 3. They're out there to serve as extra eyes and ears to any given situation, and they are the witnesses. They are the people that will be able to provide us with information as to the people that were involved in a situation or saw the accident. There might be, say, an accident and the child is hit by a car and the car leaves. We have hit and run accidents all the time in this city. So being able to provide that description and possible damage to the car, any information on a license plate number, that's real important information for us to have. Safe Walk members are not crossing guards or traffic officers. This is very, very important. We don't want you out in the crosswalks crossing kids. We don't want you in a position of trying to tell parents where they can park or where they can't park. But be observant of those situations, such as if you have kids that are trying to cross, if you notice that there's, on any given day, an en masse type of exodus from the school and the kids just walk through the middle of the street, that's when we need to provide some education to the kids, whether it's a school assembly, and we've done that before. Maybe trying to get the traffic officers out there, or a patrol officer or school liaison officer to come out and spend time at the school, maybe to help do some education on site with the kids and with the parents. So those are appropriate things, but documenting that type of activity so that we know that that's going on at the school is very important. Again, they're not to direct traffic, stop traffic, engage in driver disputes. If you do have an issue where you have parents are in an altercation with each other, whether it's a pickup spot, because some parents have their own pickup spot that they like to pick their kids up at, and that is their spot. Or you have a fender bender, that's appropriate to call the school and have staff member handle, or even have us come out and handle. And then we talked about this earlier. Parking lot areas are also areas where Safe Walk members are not to patrol. And that includes putting flyers on cars or handing flyers to parents who are not parked properly. All right, what do you do if you find drugs or any other illegal paraphernalia? Now, this has happened before at some of the schools where they may find a syringe, or they may find a knife, or they may find a bag that has a substance in it, whether it's a green leafy substance or a white substance. If the child hands it to them, then they need to get a hold of the school as soon as possible. And they need to make sure that the staff member from the school notifies the police department so that we can take possession of those items. Now, if the syringe or and if it's a syringe, the syringe should be placed in a safe place. A volunteer should not be touching it. A child should not be touching it. So it needs to be put in a safe place, whether it's down in a gutter or some other location, so that we can take possession of it, because we don't want any situation where there's any kind of a needle prick. We don't want those kinds of things to happen. And again, the radio to the front office to contact the police. Keep the kids back away from the substances if they happen to see it on the sidewalk, or if it's in the dirt area or underneath a bush. Just having the kids notify you as to where the location is, seeing that it is that, and then notifying the school to contact the police department. What should we do if you see the kids fighting? Blowing your whistle to try and get their attention. Again, contact the And the best thing that they can do is to document the information. If they know the name, again, providing that to the school liaison. don't get into an interaction with the child, and be as calm as you possibly can. And again, you're the eyes and ears, and unfortunately, we can't always be out there at all the schools at all the time. And we really do appreciate our parent volunteers, and I feel that it is helping to make our schools safer, and it also provides the students with somebody that they feel more comfortable with being able to go up and talk to, because they're not always comfortable with coming up and talking to somebody in uniform. But if a parent is out there and they develop that rapport with the parent volunteers, there's a lot of information that is provided to those volunteers that wouldn't necessarily be provided to us. And I think it's a great program, and we greatly appreciate the participants and the parents that are out there volunteering.